morning to you. So the talk is a little bit philosophical. I hope you accept this. So when we talk about climate change refugees, there are three kinds of groups who react to it very differently. So the first group says, "Oh, that's not a problem. Who cares?" Okay, now we're not going to talk about them, right? The second group says, "Okay, what's the big fuss?" I mean, people move, right? We all move from place to place. You grow up in Tel Aviv and you move to Haifa, or you grow up in Washington and end up in Canada, or you grow up in Mexico and end up in Germany. That's okay. That's okay. You know, people move. That's part of the 21st century. We don't have to. It's an issue that we don't have to bother with. That's okay. You know, people move. That's part. We don't have to. It's an issue that we don't have to bother with this. So I'm not going to relate to them as well. But the third group says, "Okay, there is a problem, and we have to face it. And the problem is that there is what we call environmental injustice." And this is like any other issue of distributive justice, where we all benefit from something, but some of us pay the cost and others don't. Like we all want to have bread in the morning, but some of us have to wake up at 4 a.m. and go to the bakery and bake, and so that we can have bread. So we should compensate them, right? So that's an issue of environmental justice. So benefiting from the goods of the 21st century, and the cost is climate change. And some of us are more vulnerable to the cost of climate change than others. For example, because their island is now flooded and they don't have a place to live in. So we should compensate them, like we should give them a house in Manhattan, okay, or a home in Manhattan. But I will argue that there's no choice. And that's the case of environmental or climate change refugees is a very strong case of injustice because it involves what I would like to call the functioning of having a sense of place. And that's something which goes way beyond the regular case of injustice. Because this functioning is incommensurable with money, so it should be home, or with other functionings. Okay, so that's my argument in a nutshell. I should also argue that so we could make environmental refugees or climate change refugees better off, but we cannot really compensate for this loss. And therefore, our duty is to do all we can to prevent climate change and not to take it for granted that there is going to be climate change and we can compensate for this. Before I go on with the argument, I need to just define the concepts that I'm going to use. So environmental justice is about the distribution among humans of access to environmental beds and goods. Either you live by a beautiful landscape, that's an environmental good. You live by a place which is polluted, that's an environmental bad. When I talk about environmental, the climate change refuge, this indifference curve, and from this comes the rationale of compensation. If you look at the legal system, that's what the legal system does. It says, okay, you were robbed, or somebody talked not nicely about you, and then they should compensate you. Here is the amount of money that they should give you in order for you to compensate for being robbed or for being humiliated in this way. But I argue that when it comes to environmental displacement and climate change refugees, the compensation misses the essence of the loss, which is associated with this environmental displacement. In order to understand this, let me give you the following example. So suppose that my child comes to me and says, I'm so miserable because at school, everybody boycotts me, right? Children don't play with me. And during the break, I stand alone on the corner and everybody's playing and they're cheerful and I'm so miserable. So I say, okay, kid, don't worry, I'll give you 200 shekels. Right? I mean, this is not only missing the essence of what he's experiencing, this is actually humiliating him because he's complaining about being miserable and I'm offering him money, right? And even if he says, I'm miserable because everybody is boycotting me, and I'm saying, okay, I'll take you to the Luna Park, and this comes closer to compensation, it still doesn't solve the problem. I'm making him better off because I'm taking him to the Luna Park, and in a way, I'm causing him to be more cheerful, but I'm not compensating for the experience that he has been through. I think that the same goes to losing the sense of place. Because if we say that we can compensate them, we treat the people who complain about losing the sense of place as if they were consumers of place. But we don't consume place. I mean, we buy a home, right? But not a sense of place. We cannot buy a sense of place. They're talking like citizens rather than consumers. And that's a very different attitude or mindset. They're saying, as citizens of this island, we have lost our sense of place. How many minutes? 2, 3?
Yep.
Okay, good. So those who say, oh, don't worry about climate change, we'll compensate these people who are more vulnerable to climate change, and justify in this way they're continuing to behave the way they do and to pollute and so on, are committing a categorical error. They're not talking about the real loss. But could we compensate in another way? Could we say, okay, you're losing a functioning of a sense of place, but we can give you another, we can sustain or strengthen another functioning that you have in exchange. For example, maybe we could help you to read. Suppose you're illiterate. Now we'll teach you how to read. Or maybe we'll teach you to play basketball because you always wanted to play basketball. We'll build a basketball stadium for you and you'll be able to play basketball. But that's again missing the essence of this loss, because you could compensate functionings with other functionings. And in a way, many of us do it all the time. We sacrifice or risk one functioning of our life because we, at this particular moment, we want another functioning. So we sacrifice or risk another, the previous functioning and gain the other functioning. But if you think about the role of this functioning in creating this, our well-being and psychological well-being, there's no substitute. There's nothing that you can substitute the role of place in our well-being with. What about a different place? What if you say, okay, man, you lost this place in the desert, but we'll give you now a beautiful flat in Manhattan. Okay, again, what I'm saying is you make this person better off, but you don't really answer the problem. And in order to show this, I'll end with another metaphor. So when I was 12, I lost my father. My father died very young, and this was very traumatic for me, of course. And my father was great, and he was gone. And then my mother remarried after 3 years. And she married this guy here on the right, who was a wonderful stepfather. He didn't take me to football, but he drove me to the football stadium. He said, this is enough. I'm not going to watch this silly game. But anyway, he was very nice to me. He was very kind to me. He never shouted at me. He helped me with my math homework, okay? And he's still alive and kicking now when he's 101 years old. That's his picture from this year. And he's really nice and charming, and I go visit him very often. Every Saturday, we sit and talk for hours. So when my mother remarried, I was better off because there was this man in family who helped me with my math homework. But I was still an orphan. And it didn't compensate for the experience of losing a father when you're 12. Okay? That's what we do when we offer these guys who are now climate change refugees a flat in Manhattan or a beautiful house in Hamburg. they're better off, but we are not compensating for anything. So I'll stop here. Perhaps I'll skip this slide and I'll say thank you very much.